Hello there friends, and welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. The trailer for The Bad Batch's final season just dropped out of nowhere. And the trailer leads off where the last season ended, with the Bad Batch, everyone's favorite family of misfit clones, reeling with the death of Tech. Or at least that's what we're supposed to believe. In the last moments of Season 2, Dr. Hemlock, who's replaced Admiral Rampart as the big Imperial Bad, presents Clone Force 99 with the broken goggles of Tech, which means he's at least seen the body of the fallen clone. But since this is Star Wars, I do have to remind you guys that death is not always permanent for a variety of different reasons, whether you're just so overwhelmed with hatred and anger that you refuse to die, like Maul.
Kenobi.
Or you've unlocked some secret Sith technique to transfer your essence into another vessel of a body, like Palpatine.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Or maybe you just simply become one with the Force, like Qui-Gon Jinn.
My imagination, it must be.
No. It is I, Qui-Gon Jinn.
The point is, if you're special enough as a character, someone will find a way to revive you, or you can just claw your way back out to the living. And Tech definitely was a very unique clone, and his proximity to a cloning program and a bunch of mad scientists meant that anything is possible. But we'll talk about that in another video. What I want to talk about today is something a bit more interesting. It's not just a revival of a long dead character, it's the changing of canon in a lot of ways. Because at the end of that trailer for The Bad Batch final season, we hear a very familiar voice, followed by seeing a very familiar face.
I wasn't planning on killing you, but you're making it very tempting.
That's Asajj Ventress, and she's supposed to be dead. She died at the end of the Clone Wars in canon. We love sneaking economic lessons into our Star Wars lore videos, and so it seems fitting that today's sponsor is Monopoly Go. Great news! You can finally bring your favorite game Monopoly everywhere you go on your mobile phone. Monopoly Go allows you to enjoy the rush of battling it out with friends and family as you build a sprawling real estate empire. The game really captures the original essence of the board game, but with enhanced features and gameplay elements. You have all of your favorite board pieces, you can buy property, and then enhance their worth with houses and hotels. There's also hourly events, tournaments, cash grabs, and even a Plinko mini-game. And the best part is you don't have to clean up the board afterwards. Jump in and jump out of the game for short 5-minute sessions or play for as long as you like. And unlike the board game, even if you are alone, you can still play. So check out Monopoly Go by clicking on the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen. I admittedly never really liked Asajj Ventress in the beginning, or Ventress as she was known in the 2003 Clone Wars animated series she was first introduced in. Apparently, she was named after the town of Ventress, Louisiana, after a Lucasfilm exec saw her sketch and said that she reminded him of the voodoo queen from the area, Marie Laveau. I don't really see the resemblance at all, but as a teenager at the time, I was terrified of voodoo, witches, bald-headed banshees of all types. There were a lot of terrifying older women in my life back then, and Asajj Ventress reminded me a lot of them. And so when I saw her emerging from the gladiator arena on Ratatek, I was disgusted by her appearance and terrified of what she represented. This was no mere battle droid, this was an incredibly deadly and dangerous Sith assassin. And her duel with Anakin on the Massassi Temple on Yavin 4, backlit by lightning and thunder, was perhaps one of the highlights of the Clone Wars TV show from 2003. The environment perfectly mirrored the emotions of the characters on screen, the battle raging inside of these two combatants through the Force. It was made clear by this point that Asajj Ventress was no scrub. She was a worthy villain, someone who could truly challenge the Chosen One, and that made her terrifying.
Padawan, your fall will be my ascension to the Sith.
When Filoni's Clone Wars series came out, Asajj Ventress would reappear as the Hairless Harpy once again. Ahsoka came up with that nickname, not me.
Isn't the Hairless Harpy?
She was deceitful, angry, and deadly, and her relationship with some of the main Jedi protagonists in the series were probably some of the most memorable relationships in the early episodes. Asajj Ventress was the perfect pairing for Ahsoka Tano. These were two young fighters, potent in the Force and full of ambition and reckless abandonment. The first time Ahsoka meets Asajj Ventress, she's wielding a single lightsaber to Asajj Ventress's two. I've always wondered if it was Asajj Ventress that inspires Ahsoka to dual wield. Then you have Asajj Ventress' relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin, which can be characterized by her sultry one-liners.
Ventress. And here I thought this mission would be unpleasant.
The pleasure's all mine, my dear Obi-Wan. I've missed you.
Asajj Ventress, this hideous and terrifyingly competent Sith assassin who traded sexually fueled barbs with her enemies and kissed her male victims like a succubus before ending their short and pitiful lives, was something else. And as a young teenager watching this before my own sexual awakening, this was fucking terrifying. But then something happened. Asajj Ventress would fall from grace. She would be betrayed by Count Dooku during the middle of the Battle of Sullust, when Dooku's own master started feeling threatened by his apprentice's apprentice.
My allegiance is to you and you alone.
Then you must prove it. Eliminate her.
She's my most trusted. I said, eliminate her! As you wish, my lord.
And despite my hatred for the character, I felt a pang of sorrow when I saw this. It was very clear that Asajj Ventress was being betrayed, and this was not really a fair situation for her at all.
You have failed me for the last time. You are no longer my apprentice. And now, you shall die.
And on top of that, Asajj Ventress was a highly competent warrior, if I haven't said that enough in this video, and I understood her value to the Separatists. She was a clear asset to the droid army, and despite being outmaneuvered by Yoda on one occasion and the boys Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi on a few other occasions, she's always punched above her weight. I mean, the retrieval of Nute Gunray while he was on his way to Coruscant was brilliant. She completely outfoxed Master Luminara Unduli and Ahsoka Tano. She also held her own against Obi-Wan and Anakin at the same time on multiple occasions. That has to stand for something, right? My sympathy for the character would only grow when we follow her to her original homeworld of Dathomir. When she returns to her clan, the Night Sisters, it's here we learn about her past. She was ripped away from her own mother as an infant by a crime lord. She was basically a peace offering, and by giving her to the crime lord, she basically saves her entire tribe. And she also becomes a slave. Now, surprisingly, that criminal does take good care of her because he wants to turn her into a living weapon. But then that criminal is killed, leaving her once again on her own. Luck would have it, a Jedi Knight by the name of Kai Narek would find her afterwards. He was on some personal vendetta against the Pirates of the Outer Rim and would train Asajj as his own Padawan. Far away from the Jedi Temple, of course. Her training would be less theoretical and more practical. Unfortunately, her own master's recklessness would end her training before she was truly ready to be on her own. At which point she's discovered by Dooku. Before she's even a woman. Asajj Ventress has already been abandoned 3 times, and so Count Dooku's betrayal of her is just that much worse. Asajj would send the rest of the Clone Wars TV show attempting to destroy Count Dooku. This would lead to the heart-wrenching destruction of her entire tribe of Night Sisters at the hands of Dooku and Palpatine. This would technically be the 5th time that she's been abandoned. This time her entire culture, her people, have left her because she is the sole survivor. And because Asajj was a survivor, thanks to the great pain that she suffered all throughout her life, it also made her extremely resilient to disasters just like this. And the one thing she never really lost through all of her ordeals was her force abilities and combat skills. She would become a bounty hunter and chase credits rather than power. Now, originally, Dave Filoni was going to have a 7th and 8th season of the Clone Wars, and there was going to be an 8-episode arc that would tell the story of Asajj Ventress at the end of the Clone Wars, which would lead to her death. And this story was not only going to be incredibly important to Asajj Ventress' story, but it was supposed to showcase just how far the Jedi had fallen by the last year of the war. Unfortunately, those seasons were never made. And the new 7th season of the Clone Wars follows a slightly different trajectory and features Ahsoka Tano, Dave Filoni's other favorite. It is clear, though, by how many times Asajj Ventress appears in the Clone Wars that Dave Filoni has always kind of prepared her to be the dark side Ahsoka Tano of his own cinematic universe. I mean, there's a reason why he spends so much effort building this character arc, and seeing her transformation at the very end was something really magical. And I guess Disney execs just didn't want to see it on screen, and so the 8-episode Ventress arc would become the excellent novel known as Dark Disciple. The story of Dark Disciple goes like this. Driven by desperation and constant warfare, the Jedi Order has finally made a very tough decision. You see, the Jedi's lofty morals and ideology had buckled upon first contact with the galaxy-wide civil war, and now it was finally beginning to crumble. There was only so much a Jedi could endure. They were, after all, sentient beings, and they experienced loss and death just like everyone else. after Count Dooku orders the death of an entire convoy of Makran refugees trying to escape their home planet. The Jedi High Council sanctions an assassination attempt on Count Dooku. Mace Windu suggests the option as usual. He can flirt with the dark side and remain untouched. But whether the rest of the Jedi Council can weather such a deliberate act of violence is a whole nother story. Quinlan Voss is given the job thanks to his connections to the underworld, and his avenue of approach would be to partner up with Asajj Ventress. No one has tried to kill Count Dooku as many times as she has, and the Jedi were sure that she was still up for the task. The Asajj Ventress we see in Dark Disciple is very different from the young, angry woman we see in the beginning of the Clone Wars. The flame, the anger that the Sith ignited in her had begun to wane. It's becoming clear that she was no longer just a hairless, evil banshee. As a matter of fact, she now had hair, and her more pleasant demeanor also reflected a change internally, which is remarkable. I mean, this was a really tough woman who had been used by the galaxy, but now is somehow wiser to how power can corrupt and destroy everything in its path. To make mistakes is something that all humans do, but to be able to learn from those mistakes and be courageous enough to change yourself and try to rectify the mistakes you've made in the past, that takes true courage. You know, in a lot of ways, her and Maul's story have a lot of similarities. But the difference is Maul never really lets go of his hatred and his desire for revenge. But Asajj Ventress eventually does. She isn't exactly defeated though, she's much more cautious now, and while she's no longer a Sith, she hasn't completely abandoned her dark side abilities. She just now has a more realistic understanding of how dangerous the dark side can be. This, in my opinion, is Ventress at peak form. She is stunning, she is amazing here, and it's not surprising that Quinlan Voss would fall in love with her. And Asajj Ventress, for the first time, allows someone in her life not just as a master, but as an equal partner. It's really a classic Dave Filoni story arc. It introduced us to a character that is so easy to hate, but then over time he peels back the layers behind the character's personality until we see the complexity, the humanity, the experiences that have shaped them into the individuals they were, and how they are now struggling to become something better and wiser. But ultimately, Dark Disciple is a tragic story. Asajj Ventress never gets a peaceful retirement like Ahsoka Tano gets. Instead, Asajj goes with Quinlan Voss on her last adventure to take out Count Dooku. And along the way, Quinlan Voss actually falls to the dark side. And Asajj doesn't just leave him there, she goes and rescues him, turns him back to the light side, and at the last moment, she sacrifices her life to save Quinlan Voss from Count Dooku's Sith lightning. So I guess in a way, Asajj does find some peace. She redeems herself in the eye of the fans. And also to the Jedi Council, Quinlan Voss tells them exactly what Asajj Ventress does at the end. And perhaps more importantly, Asajj Ventress redeems herself in the Force. I remember finishing that book and being shocked by the ending. I mean, as a YouTuber, I try to read every Star Wars novel that comes out. And some books, like Twilight Company, I grab with eager anticipation. But Dark Disciple is not something really on my radar. I just read it when it came out, and I was engrossed by the story of Asajj Ventress. I was touched by a transformation. I mean, how could someone who suffered so much, who was turned into a deadly weapon at such a young age, find redemption? I thought to myself, if she can become a better person, I surely can, adjust some of my personal defects and character flaws. Now, if you told me after I finished reading Dark Disciple that Asajj Ventress would return, I would have probably been kind of happy about that. I'd really come to, like the character a lot. I really respect who she becomes and how she develops. But upon seeing her standing there in the Bad Batch final trailer with that Imperial pauldron on her shoulder, now I'm not so sure this is going to be a good idea. I mean, she had already redeemed herself. Her story arc was over. She had finally found peace in death. But then again, Dave Filoni is famous for bringing back characters that he really likes. Ahsoka Tano is a great example of this, and I'm torn between whether it's a good idea or not. I mean, I definitely enjoyed the Ahsoka series that came out recently, but I can't help but feel like I'm watching an empty shell of a character when I see Ahsoka. It's just something that happens when you've revived and brought back to the living a character a few too many times. Now, I did a little bit more research, and actually, Filoni had already planned to bring Ventress back during the Star Wars Resistance cartoon that came out a few years back. In Star Wars Resistance, she was actually going to duel Kylo Ren, which could have been really cool, but her character would ultimately be replaced by Mika Gray. Dave Filoni made the wise choice to not include Asajj Ventress because he knew that it would really distract us from the main characters in the show. But my personal theory is that Dave Filoni likes to control his own characters, and having someone else write such an epic death for Asajj Ventress just really didn't sit well with him. Now, Brad Raw, one of the directors of The Bad Batch, said the following about Asajj Ventress' return. We don't want to spoil anything, but want fans to know that any new storytelling with Ventress will align with the events of Star Wars Dark Disciple. Which kind of means, once again, they're playing it a little bit loose with the novels. Just like how Star Wars Tales of the Jedi kind of rewrote those scenes from the Ahsoka novel. Although that was a bit more minor of a change. Because in Dark Disciple, Asajj Ventress doesn't die off screen or anything mysterious like Tech's own fall. Instead, she dies, and then Quinlan Voss literally takes her body back to Dathomir and then buries her. And no, they didn't prepare her bones in a way so that she could rise up again like a Night Sister zombie. She's completely dead. Now, of course, given the fact that Dr. Hemlock has access to a lot of Kamino and cloning technology, anything can happen as long as you have some DNA intact. But it is very disheartening to think that Asajj Ventress would go through everything she did, find redemption, and then somehow reappear, serving the Empire, serving the Sith once again after all they've done to her. I felt like she was past this. I mean, even if she's just a bounty hunter working for the Empire, it just feels cheap to bring her back like this. It should also be noted that her yellow lightsaber seems to indicate that she hasn't fallen back to the dark side completely, which I guess is a good sign. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about all this. What are your theories? Are you excited to see her in the final season of The Bad Batch? I definitely am torn. I am excited to see her. I love The Bad Batch. And, you know, Asajj has become one of my favorite characters. So, you know, that is interesting. Anyway, let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.